One of your brake lights working. Let's see if the top one did. You're going straight on. Yeah, okay, we'll find out in a minute then. Yep, that's one brake light. It kind of nicely ties into what I'm about to talk about, to be honest. Hello everyone, I am Slow Rider, this is my world, and isn't it gloriously sunny? Yes it is, I hope you're enjoying the weather. Getting out on the bike if you can. As I fail to find a gear. There we go. So every so often I see dashcam videos and there's mention made of occasionally mention made, I should say, in the comment section of maybe people should be retested every so often. Because driving standards are so bad, you know, and dashcam videos are now so common, it's unreal. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not particularly pro retesting. I have a license, I don't want to be retested on it. That's, you know, that's not related to how good I am. That's just, I don't want to do it, you know. It's kind of a human nature kind of thing. Come on, hurry up. Don't want to be in that gear. So I get it, you know, there's very much pushback against it, and I suspect many of these people may not actually have a full driving license. I don't know, I don't know them. They might have, but you know. The thing is, even though I'm against this idea generally speaking, I have to admit there is a certain amount of logic to it. There's a certain amount of necessity, because driving standards are not getting better. And there needs to be something to limit the amount of bad drivers on the road. That said, as I say, I'm not pro retesting, so I don't really want to go through it. But I think usual mention made is something like every 10 years, and if I remember rightly, that's how often you reapply for your, renew your driving license these days anyway. You're supposed to send off every 10 years. I mean, you get to keep it to the, for like 50 years or something, but every 10 years the actual license itself runs out. And it's just a case of replacing the piece of plastic. That's as I understand it. Maybe I'm wrong, I might need to look it up. But in any case, would a retest every 10 years be a bad thing? Hopefully this can spark some sort of debate, you know, put the argument to rest one way or the other. What would be best, what would be not? I have a feeling most people would be against it. But I know that usually when it does come up, either in conversation or on YouTube channels, it's usually one of three points of view that are put across. The first of them is that it will penalise good drivers. Maybe. But I would say the average driver is not a good driver. The average driver is kind of okay. Could do with some more training, and I probably put myself in that category, to be honest. I'm not a good rider of bikes. I'm not the greatest rider of bikes, I should put it that way. I'm not bad. You know, if I'm being honest, I'm not the worst out there. but I'm not the best. Would it really penalise them? I guess it depends how it's set up. I mean, most people think of that in terms of cost, because they're thinking, oh yeah, you have to go through all those lessons and the cost. It costs hundreds of pounds to do that. Oh, it'd be terrible. And you know, no. I mean, a test is 63 quid. Was it 68 at the minute? We'll call it 70 for the sake of argument. 70 quid for the test if you're doing a new driving test now. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, is it just the traffic lights? Okay. Seems to be a lot of traffic around. The current test is somewhere in the region of 65-70 quid. Just for the practical, not the theory. Assuming we can keep it to that sort of price, yes, it's a cost. And I suppose, yes, the really bad drivers would have to face that £70 cost. Every 10 years. It's not a big cost. It really isn't. I don't know why it would be considered that. But maybe it's not just the monetary cost of the thing. Maybe it's a time thing as well. I mean, yeah, good drivers shouldn't have to go through it. I agree. They really shouldn't. But you can't single out who's a good driver and who's a bad driver without taking them, which means the bad drivers wouldn't get tested. And that would kind of defeat the object of having this conversation in the first place, I guess. But the thing is, good drivers will maintain their vehicles. This leads me back to the car at the very start of the video. One brake light working. To my mind, they're not a good driver, because unless 2 sets of brake lights have gone out during today's drive, they haven't maintained their vehicle properly. So, making sure I stay safe there. Yeah, every year there's an MOT for a vehicle. Well, I mean, except brand new vehicles, that's slightly different, but for your average car on the road at the minute, every year there's an MOT. Why should good drivers be penalised for that? Well, that's every year. What's that, 40, 50 quid? Every year? No, we should just scrap the MOT. Actually, we probably... The thing is, the MOT does actually take some really seriously bad cars off the road. So would a test every 10 years take really bad drivers off the road? Is that worth... Is the safer roads worth the cost every 10 years? For a relatively small section of the population? I mean, gradually, average drivers will become good drivers because they'll be actually learning proper techniques every so often. That's got to be a good thing, right? So I don't think the penalising good drivers argument really holds up. I mean, it's a debating point, I'll grant you that, but I don't think the argument really holds much water. You know, it'd be like a driving instructor saying, well, you're a really good driver during these lessons, so we'll just skip the tests. We'll tell the DVSA you're that good, and you know, you won't bother with the test because you're quite good. That's never going to happen. But that's essentially the argument that's being made here. Why should they be penalised for paying for the test when they're clearly good enough? And yes, there is an answer to that one as well, but I mean, I'm just making a point here. This is why debate has to happen. I think genuinely, in terms of cost, there could be a way of dealing with it. Maybe a rebate if you pass, or, I mean, the penalty for not passing it obviously would be you need to pay for a new test. There's a thought. The second, and probably the most common argument I see against retesting drivers, is that bad drivers will just be good for the 30 minutes or so it takes to go around the test. Okay. Yes, there will be some drivers who can do that. Absolutely, can't deny that. The similar line is that they only need to be good at the point that you're testing them. And the problem is with this, I mean, it's kind, I can argue on 2 points on this one. One, to get your license, you only need to be good for about half an hour. Genuinely. And after that, you never test it again, so you never need to be good, right? Let's just get rid of licenses altogether. The second way, MOTs. MOTs. Spicy 110 fairly recently said in a video, it might be going back a month now actually thinking about it, but he said there has been a point where, oh yes, I believe he said it this way, on his DRZ he's fitted some LED headlights, and at one point he couldn't get them to sit at the right position, and if it had to go to an MOT at that point, he would take the LED headlights off, put the original headlight on, go through the test, and then put the LED lights back on, because as he understood it, the only reason it would fail is because it would be too low down. The headlights would be too low down. Not that they're not sufficient, it's just that they're in slightly the wrong position, which is, it's kind of a silly way to fail a vehicle, to be honest. But the point being, he knew that even though his bike, as he's riding it every day, would fail the MOT, he only needed to make it good enough for the MOT to mean that he could ride it for the rest of the year. But next year he's going to have to put it in for an MOT again. And he'll probably make sure it's perfectly fine to go through the MOT again. I have no reason to suspect otherwise. And if I'm being blatantly honest, I think his bike probably is good enough to pass an MOT most of the time. He seems to know what he's doing. I don't think he's a bad mechanic or anything like that. I don't wish to insinuate that or imply it. I'm just making a point here that he could make his vehicle good enough to pass the MOT every single time, and then not worry about it for a year and then come back and do it again. No reason why car drivers couldn't be the same for a 10 yearly test. Absolutely, I agree. How many cars fail an MOT? How many bikes fail an MOT? It's only a percentage of those that go in. Probably a fairly small percentage. But are those unsafe cars now not on the road? Have they been repaired to a standard where they are deemed suitable for going on the road? Has testing them improved them in any way? Because they passed the test, and they only need to be good enough for the test, does Spicy 110 prove that the MOT is pointless? Utterly pointless? No. No, it doesn't. It doesn't prove that. It proves that you can be good for the duration of the test and then not for the rest of the year. Yes, absolutely, but it doesn't prove that the test is pointless. Far from it, in fact. The number of vehicles that fail an MOT, or even just get advisories, proves that the test is worth it. It proves that it's necessary. The third argument made, and I don't hear this very often, we do not have the facilities to do it, particularly if we were to have another pandemic. My argument against this point is, how many MOT places were there before MOTs were a thing? How many football teams were there before football became a thing? The answer is none, because they weren't needed. But by the time they were needed, they were about. We have plenty of MOT stations now. Is there any reason that the same couldn't apply for retesting? Could we broaden the horizon of who could actually do these tests? Given that you're not qualifying a new driver, you're assessing a standard of driving. Could driving schools be trained sufficiently that they could do it? Probably could have gone then, never mind. Really? You fucking stupid or what? Sorry, that annoyed me. He's going right the same way as me, but he pulled up alongside me on the left hand side of me because I didn't go for a gap. One gap. Ugh, bloody drivers. You see, this is the thing. These standards of driving are flipping awful. Which is why I think there is an argument to be made for retesting. And it's not to penalise the good drivers. It's to make sure that there is a standard. And I'm sure the good drivers would actually appreciate the bad drivers being off the road. I mean, the really bad ones. I mean, I'm going to suggest here for a moment, people look at dashcam videos. Not for the dashcams themselves. You know, not the cameras, who sometimes can't drive. Not for the alleged subject of the videos, who quite often can't drive. But even just look at the comments section. Granted, some of it's international. I mean, I got told how to use a roundabout by a Canadian who had never been to the UK. I didn't actually get told. I got told how Canadians use roundabouts. Just subtly different. But when you look at the British ones, the ones who start quoting the highway code, and you realise you're actually quoting it wrong, or you're taking the wrong thing from it. Well, obviously British drivers who don't quote them, but say, oh, the highway code says this. Doesn't say where in the highway code or anything like that. It just says, oh, the highway code says this. No, it doesn't. Go back and read the highway code. There was a recent change to the highway code, and you had some people saying, oh, there's no change. Some people saying it's drastically different, and some people saying, well, there's only a little bit of a difference. In fact, I highlighted how some of the new rules could actually be read differently, and someone had a go at me in the comments section for saying it, and, you know, claiming that I'm part of the problem, and so on and so forth. And if you know that you're right, how you're doing things is right, if you did get tested again, would you look that up? Would you look up whether you were right or not? Or would you, unprompted, would you look it up? Would you look everything up to make sure you're doing it right? Genuinely, would you? Stuff that you know you do wrong, okay, yeah, you might look that up to make sure you know how to do it properly. But if you know how to do it right, would you look it up? Probably not. The bad drivers definitely wouldn't, because they know they're right. And okay, let's assume that the majority of people could in fact fool the testers for the majority of the time. It only takes a little bit of a slip to make a massive mistake. One little bad habit. I've been riding my bike throughout the pandemic. I've been riding the bike before the pandemic. I've been a key worker, which means I've been riding it through lockdowns to get to and from work. I've seen how crap the driving standards are on the road these days. I do not want to have to do a retest, but I would be happy to do one if it meant the roads were safer. Can I put it that way? That's my point of view on this. And if there's a discussion that can happen to make the roads safer, I would be happy to have that discussion. Is there a better way to make the roads safer? You know, teaching BMW drivers how to use indicators, that sort of thing. That's never going to happen, let's be honest. I mean, them using indicators, not the teaching. It does happen. I actually remember a video once, and it was a dashcam video, and I think it was a BMW, it might have been an Audi. Anyway, they put an indicator on just before a right-hand junction, right-hand indicator just before the right-hand junction, and they didn't go down it, they just carried straight on. The next junction was a left-hand turn, and with the indicator still going on the right-hand side, it's maybe 10 seconds down the road, they pull into this left-hand turn, as if it's a lay-by to stop, and I couldn't help but think, maybe, just maybe, they've stopped because they've heard an unusual ticking sound. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments section. I am prepared to be slated again. Try to keep it polite. Again, that's all I ask, you know, in the comments section. You can disagree as much as you want, and I'm happy to have a conversation, but just be polite. There is always a way to be polite. Ooh, that's the wrong gear. A bit further, I want some shade, come on. Anyway, I think I'm going to leave it there for this video. I think I've crossed all the points that I was going to try and make. Don't forget, if you have any points you want to put across, just leave it in the comment section. Do all the other YouTubey stuffs. You know, like, subscribe, so on and so forth. It won't hurt you. And you can disagree with me some more in other videos. Until the next one, be good humans. Ta-ta for now. Don't actually know where Daihatsu is going. I think perhaps he's just left an indicator on. But you'd think it'd be ticking away in the in the driver's seat there. Oh, someone who does know the highway code. Most unusual. Not even going right here, he'll go through the lights though. Yep. Still indicating.